Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Lee Thay-Thung Hang said Vietnam has had several appropriate diplomatic exchanges requesting immediate withdrawal from Vietnam's exclusive economic zone. The ship, owned by the government-run China Geological Survey, began research around the contested Spratly Islands on July 3, according to the U.S.-based Center for Strategic and International Studies. Before it was spotted, a Chinese Coast Guard vessel also patrolled near Vietnamese supply ships in a threatening manner, according to the CSIS. China has not confirmed the presence of its ships in the area. Beijing invokes its so-called Nine-Dash Line to justify its apparently historic rights to the waterway and has previously built up artificial islands as well as installed airstrips and military equipment in the region. The line runs as far as 2,000 kilometers from the Chinese mainland to within a few hundred kilometers of the Philippines, Malaysia, and Vietnam. In 2014, Beijing moved an oil rig into waters claimed by Hanoi, sparking deadly anti-China protests across Vietnam.
The European Union on Thursday flatly rejected an aggressive push by Britain's new Prime Minister Boris Johnson to rewrite the Brexit agreement. Earlier, in a pugnacious parliamentary debut as leader, Johnson had urged the European Union to rethink its opposition to reopening the current deal.
I would prefer us to leave the EU with a deal. I would much prefer it. I believe that it is possible even at this late stage, and I will work flat out to make it happen. So, and for our part, we will throw ourselves into these negotiations with the greatest energy and determination and in a spirit of friendship. And I hope that the EU will be equally ready and that they will rethink their current refusal to make any changes to the withdrawal agreement. I also want therefore to repeat unequivocally our guarantee to the 3.2 million EU nationals now living and working among us. I thank them for their contribution to our society and for their patience, and I can assure them that under this government they will have the absolute certainty of the right to live and remain.
Chief Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier warned EU member states that Johnson was trying to divide them by amping up the threat of a damaging no-deal divorce. And the president of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, told Johnson in a phone call that EU leaders have given Brussels no mandate to renegotiate. Meanwhile, UK opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn says Labour Party will do everything to stop a no-deal Brexit and attacks the newly formed government that he calls the most hard-right cabinet he's ever seen, and which has no plan to deal with Brexit.
We will do everything to stop a no-deal Brexit. We'll do everything to stop the type of Tory deal that may be in Boris Johnson's mind at the present time. But we also believe that at the end of that process, any deal, and we'll find it that we find unacceptable, we think should go to a public vote to decide on the future relationship with this country and Europe. There is no plan to deal with Brexit. There is no plan to deal with the crisis in public services all across Britain. There is no plan to deal with the climate emergency that this country and our planet absolutely faces at the present time.
In other news, the U.S. government will resume its use of capital punishment after a 16-year hiatus and has set execution dates for 5 convicted murderers, according to Attorney General Bill Barr. Acting on President Trump's call for tougher penalties on violent crimes, Barr directed the Federal Bureau of Prisons to adopt a new lethal injection protocol to clear the way to carry out death sentences. There were 25 executions in the U.S. last year. all carried out by state authorities on people convicted of state charges. But debate about the methods of execution and controversy over the drugs used, as well as reticence from Trump's predecessor, Barack Obama, means that no federal prisoner has been put to death since 2003. Barr ordered the Bureau of Prisons to carry out executions using a single lethal injection of the barbiturate pentobarbital, replacing the previous 3 drug cocktails using thiopental. Death penalty opponents blasted the policy change and called for a court-ordered delay in the executions, the first of which is scheduled for early December. The federal death penalty is arbitrary, racially biased, and rife with poor lawyering and junk science. These and other concerns, including troubling questions about the new execution protocol, are why there must be additional court review before the federal government can proceed with any execution. This is according to Ruth Friedman, director of the Federal Capital Habeas Project. Under the U.S. justice system, crimes can be tried either in federal courts at a national level or state courts at a regional level. Certain crimes that apply nationally, such as counterfeiting currency or mail theft, are automatically tried at federal level, while others are tried at federal courts based on the severity of the crimes. The death penalty was outlawed at state and federal level by a 1972 Supreme Court decision that canceled all existing death penalty statutes. A 1976 Supreme Court decision reinstated the death penalty to a number of states, and in 1988 the government passed legislation that made the death penalty available again at a federal level.
Swedish politicians Friday fired back at U.S. President Donald Trump after he rode with Prime Minister Stefan Löfven over Sweden's move to press assault charges against American rapper A$AP Rocky. Several Swedish politicians protested Trump's remarks after the president took to Twitter on Thursday to express his frustration. Very disappointed in Prime Minister Stefan Löfven for being unable to act. Sweden has let our African American community down in the United States, Trump tweeted, adding, "Give A$AP Rocky his freedom." He also tweeted, "We do so much for Sweden, but it doesn't seem to work the other way around." But Swedish politicians were quick to offer rebuttals, with some highlighting that the charges against the rapper, stemming from a June street brawl in Stockholm, were laid by prosecutors and were not arbitrary. "So what is it you do for us, Mr. President?" MEP Fredrik Federley tweeted. Natalie Sial, a spokeswoman for the Swedish government, said they did not have anything further to add after Trump's latest statements. In Sweden, everyone is equal before the law. The White House has been informed of this. Now the judicial process will run its course, Sial told AFP. The 30-year-old U.S. rapper, whose real name is Rakim Mayers, was arrested on July 3 along with 3 other people following the brawl on June 30. One of the others, the rapper's bodyguard, was later released. Mayers claims he acted in self-defense, but on Thursday, prosecutor Daniel Sunesson said he was pressing charges against Mayers and 2 others because, in my judgment, what has happened amounts to a crime, despite the objections about self-defense and provocations. Part of the fight was captured in an amateur video published by U.S. celebrity news outlet TMZ. The rapper later published videos on his own to Instagram, purporting to show the lead-up to the fight.
In other news, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said that it planned to start using the Russian S-400 missile defense system, a bone of contention with the United States, in April of 2020.
Ardından önümüzdeki baharda inşallah Nisan 2020 bu sistemleri aktif olarak kullanmaya başlayabileceğiz. F-35 projesinden dışlanma teklifleri başta olmak üzere bu konuda Türkiye'ye yöneltilecek hiçbir tehdidin ve yaptırımın ülkemizi güvenlik önceliklerini hayata geçirmekten alıkoyamayacağını buradan bir kez daha ifade etmek isterim.
Washington has reacted to Turkey's purchase of the S-400, which was delivered this month, by kicking the country off its F-35 fighter jet program. The U.S. says Russia will be able to glean sensitive technical knowledge about the new fighter if it is operated alongside the S-400.
More than 100 migrants were missing after their boat sank off the coast of Libya in what might be the worst tragedy in the Mediterranean this year, aid agencies said Thursday. Safa Maseli, spokesperson for the International Organization of Migration in Libya, said the sinking took place off the coast of the city of Homs, some 100 kilometers from Tripoli. She said about 145 migrants were rescued by the Libyan Coast Guard, and survivors had reported that about 150 people remained missing. General Ayub Qasem, a spokesman for the Libyan Navy, said that 134 migrants were rescued and a body recovered, while 115 other migrants are still missing. He said most of the rescued migrants were from Ethiopia, while others were Palestinians and Sudanese. The charity Doctors Without Borders said as many as 250 migrants were still missing. MSF Mission Chief Julian Reichman said the migrants had been apparently headed out to sea on 3 boats lashed together. The head of the UN Refugee Agency, Filippo Grandi, tweeted that it was the worst Mediterranean tragedy of this year.
Veteran politician Beji Caid Essebsi, who brushed aside concerns about his age when he was elected in his late 80s, helped shepherd his country to its first free nationwide ballot in the wake of the Arab Spring. He died Thursday at age 92. "I have the age that I have," he told AFP once, describing youth as a state of mind. Tunisia's first president to be democratically elected in nationwide polls, Essebsi passed away just months before his term ended, having already said he would not stand again in elections due in November. Shrewd and wily, he was a longtime player on Tunisia's political scene, serving under Habib Bourguiba, the father of Tunisian independence, as well as also under dictator Zine El Abidine Ben Ali. After Ben Ali was deposed in 2011, Essebsi came to the fore as a supporter of the revolution and was elected in 2014 at the ripe age of 88 to steer the North African country. His detractors had accused him of seeking to restore the regime of Ben Ali, who clung to power for 23 years before fleeing, combining authoritarian rule with a degree of prosperity and stability for his people. But Essebsi stood his ground, saying former Ben Ali regime figures had the right to play a role in governing Tunisia alongside all political factions. "We want a 21st century state, a progressive state," Essebsi said. The son of an anti-Islamist lawyer born to a middle-class Tunisian family in 1926, Essebsi was to become the world's oldest serving head of state after Britain's Elizabeth II.
The British Navy escorts 2 merchant vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. The HMS Montrose has been escorting UK-flagged ships in the world's busiest oil shipping lane after Iranian soldiers seized a tanker in the Flashpoint entrance to the Gulf. Ship owners are being advised to give details of their route so they can be escorted by the frigate HMS Montrose. The move follows the seizure of the British-flagged tanker Stena Impero by Iran's Revolutionary Guard on Friday. The ship's owner said the crew are safe and cooperating with officials. Shipping firm Stena Bulk said its 23 crew members, who are Indian, Russian, Latvian, and Filipino, had been able to talk directly to their families for a limited time. The decision to provide a military escort to merchant shipping follows a meeting of Downing Street's Emergency Cobra Committee to discuss the situation in the Gulf. The latest guidance advises British flag vessels to inform the Department of Transport if they are passing through the Strait of Hormuz so that a Royal Navy warship can provide a military escort.
In other news, an official said 8 gunmen impersonating federal police stole nearly a ton of precious metals, including gold, from an international airport in Brazil. No shots were fired when the thieves confronted workers inside a warehouse at Sao Paulo's Guarulhos International Airport at around 2:30 p.m. local time, according to an airport official. They made off with 750 kilograms in precious metals that had been en route to New York and Zurich. The assailants had driven vehicles resembling those used by federal police in the brazen robbery, according to the official. Police are investigating the incident. We'll take a short break. Eagle News International will be right back.
Linggo, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi.
Belgian meteorologists registered a record high temperature for the country on Thursday when Western Europe sweltered under a heat wave that has severely disrupted transport. David Degnu, chief forecaster at the Royal Meteorological Institute, said on Friday that a high of 41.8 degrees Celsius had been recorded the day before in the northern town of Beginendik, the highest since records began. In Luxembourg, a record high was also reached on Thursday with 40.8 degrees measured, beating records from 2003 according to the Grand Duchy's official meteorological agency. Heat waves occur across northern Europe when high atmospheric pressure draws up hot air from northern Africa, Portugal, and Spain, raising temperatures and increasing humidity. Heat waves are not uncommon, but according to weather experts, they are being amplified by a rise in global temperatures and are likely to become more frequent, one of the more predictable impacts of our warming climate.
Heat waves do bear the hallmark of climate change, and they are, as we saw in June, they're becoming more frequent, they're starting earlier, and they're becoming more intense. So it is, it's not a problem that's going to go away, but hopefully thanks to the heat health warnings, the heat health action plans, now in many parts of the world, we can make the incident that we saw back in 2003 in the European heat wave, that hopefully should be a thing of the past now. We know better, we've learnt our lesson, and we do have measures in place.
Under 42 degrees Celsius, Parisians and tourists in bathing suits and bikinis invaded the Trocadero fountain at the foot of the Eiffel Tower, transforming it into a giant pool for the occasion. Take a look. Records also tumbled in Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany, while Paris saw its highest ever temperature at 42.6 degrees Celsius. That is 108.7 degrees Fahrenheit, beating the previous top of 40.4 degrees Celsius, that is 104.7 degrees Fahrenheit, set in July of 1947. Trains have been slowed in several European countries to avoid damage to the railway networks, and French national operator SNCF urged travelers to delay journeys planned for Thursday. Authorities have warned people to keep an eye on those living alone and also to beware of taking the plunge to cool down after a spike in drownings. France remains haunted by the early summer of 2003, when 15,000 deaths were blamed on the heat, and the authorities were bitterly criticized for not mobilizing fast enough.
J'habite la région parisienne et c'est pas la première fois que je viens. Mais il fait tellement chaud que la piscine, en banlieue, c'est blindé, il y a trop de monde. Et puis là, je me suis dit, ça va changer des piscines de banlieue.
It's too hot to stay in the city in the daytime when it's nothing to pressure down. So for the kids, it's very cool to have some of this kind of thing with water and have fun. Yeah.
An electrical failure in the Gare du Nord station in Paris has halted all domestic and international high-speed trains, including Eurostar and Thalys services, the French SNCF rail operator said. Trains are set to resume at around 1 p.m. local time, roughly 2 hours after the electrical supply problem was detected, it said. Train services in the Netherlands and Belgium have suffered major disruption in recent days because of technical problems caused by a record-setting heat wave. High temperatures lead to extra strain on electric cables and rails. High-speed train services have been slowed down as a precaution.
While eco-tourism is booming around the world, the Dutch company Plastic Whale is offering a new style of cruises along Amsterdam's famous canals. Participants aim to fish as much plastic waste as possible during a 2-hour boat tour. In 2018, nearly 12,000 people took part in these cruises, with participants ranging from tourists or Dutch citizens, from businesses and schools. Take a look.
Obviously, you're on the beautiful canals of Amsterdam in a really nice boat, but at the same time you're active as well, and you add something positive to the canals and to the city because you're making it cleaner. And last year we collected more than 46,000 bottles. We counted them by hand, believe it or not, and 2 to 3 times the volume of other sorts of materials. You find a waste bin and it's already full. People put their stuff just underneath the waste bin, for instance, and one person starts and the other does it also. So before you know, there's a lot of waste on the streets. And then it begins to rain, or the wind begins to blow, and it rains or blows into the canals.
Really enjoyed it, but also it's really eye-opening just how much rubbish there is in all the canals. So, yeah.
Yes, but I'm more surprised with the amount of waste, stuff that is not even used.
Plastic in the sea, rivers, and other waterways is a problem around the globe, causing harm to marine ecosystems. Just how much plastic is in the canals of the city, dubbed the Venice of the North, is hard to estimate, but solutions are easier to find. Amsterdam is increasingly a victim of its own success, with its canals, architecture, and notorious red light district attracting around 80 million visitors last year, more than the entire population of the Netherlands. The Plastic Whale tours are part of a growing trend, with Amsterdam authorities separately launching a series of initiatives to direct tourists to alternative activities and ease the pressure on the top sites.
Indonesia's Tangkuban Perahu volcano in West Java province spews smokes and ashes in fresh eruption. Volcanic Ash Advisory Center, Darwin, warned about a volcanic ash plume that rose up to estimated 9,000 feet altitude or flight level 090 and is moving at 10 knots in west direction. Center for Disaster Mitigation Volcanology recommends that people around Mount Tangkuban Perahu and visitors, tourists, climbers are not allowed to go down near the base of the crater.
All right, we'll take a short break. Eagle News, and we'll be right back.
Arkansas is nicknamed the natural state because of its many scenic mountains, rivers, and forests. Coming in from Jacksonville, Arkansas, I'm Eagle News correspondent Don Omar Cuevas, wishing the Church of Christ a happy 105th anniversary.
Pep News, Linggo, alas 4 hanggang alas 5 ng hapon.
The Philippines' ranking jumped by 19 notches to 54th due to improvements in its scores for institutions, business sophistication, knowledge and technology outputs, and creative outputs in this year's edition of an index that tracks the innovation performance of countries. In the Global Innovation Index 2019, the Philippines improved its score to 36.18 from 31.56 in last year's cycle. This put the country fifth among eight Southeast Asian economies surveyed in the index. Singapore headed the region by finishing 8th, followed by Malaysia at 35th, Vietnam at 42nd, Thailand at 43rd, the Philippines, Brunei Darussalam at 71st, Indonesia at 85th, and Cambodia at 98th. The Philippines was also one of the 8 lower middle-income economies that was on the upper half of the index, along with Vietnam, Ukraine, Georgia, India, Mongolia, and Republic of Moldova. The country improved in the rankings after its input and output sub-indices went up from last year. In the GII 2019, Manila scored 41.68 and placed 76th in the Innovation Input Sub-Index from 39.18 and ranking 82nd, and posted 30.68 and landed 42nd in the Innovation Output Sub-Index from 23.98 and standing 68th. Among the 8 pillars, the Philippines got its highest rankings of 31st in the knowledge and technology outputs on strong showing in knowledge diffusion and knowledge impact. The country got its worst finish in the market sophistication indicator, placing 110th among the economies surveyed. The government's investment policy and credit programs were rated among the worst in the world and were labeled as a weakness of the Philippines. In a statement, Trade Secretary Ramon M. Lopez said the government expects the Philippines to improve its ranking in the index next year as the country has a more conducive innovation environment for creators and entrepreneurs, particularly micro, small, and medium enterprises.
The Philippines can no longer buck the trend of slower growth in and around the region for this year, according to the International Monetary Fund, as both global and local developments pull down growth expectations for the country this year. In its World Economic Outlook, or WEO update for July, the lender of last resort forecasted still sluggish growth for the world economy this year. They cut down their forecast of the world economy to 3.2% from their April forecast of 3.3%. But while earlier IMF projected the Philippines to go against the trend and grow faster in 2019, latest views from the Global Monetary Authority also show a forecasted slowdown for the Philippine economy this year. In particular, in the April WEO, the IMF said the Philippines is likely to expand at the pace of 6.5% for 2019, faster than the 6.2% economic expansion it has posted in 2018. But their July forecast now expects a slowdown by 0.2 percentage points to 6%. IMF Resident Representative to the Philippines, Yong Shenyang, said the downward revision is due to the slow external demand, which turned out to be weaker than earlier expected. He also said the delayed approval in the country's 2019 budget dented the growth prospects. Public investments would also fall short than what is earlier expected when they calibrated the April forecast. For 2020, IMF forecast the country's growth to pick up to 6.3%.
In the midst of a record heat wave, Europe was looking for a burst of sunshine from Frankfurt. Instead, Mario Draghi offered a small ray of light and more than a few clouds. European Central Bank Chief Mario Draghi warns of deteriorating inflation and growth prospects in the single currency area due to trade conflicts and uncertainty over a no-deal Brexit.
Inflationary pressures remain muted, and indicators of inflation expectations have declined. Therefore, a significant degree of monetary stimulus continues to be necessary to ensure that financial conditions remain very favorable and support the euro area expansion. And the reasons were basically found to be in the general uncertainty that's now been with us for several months, actually more than a year, and which relates, as I said many times, to trade wars, to geopolitical tensions, to now also the possibility of a hard Brexit. Certainly is another factor to take into account.
North Korea's sanctions-hit economy shrank in 2018 by its largest margin since the country's devastating famine in the 1990s, according to the South Central Bank. North Korea, which holds most of the peninsula's mineral resources, was once wealthier than its southern neighbor, but decades of mismanagement and the demise of its former benefactor, the Soviet Union, have left it deeply impoverished. The isolated nation saw its gross domestic product contract 4.1% last year, the second consecutive year of decline after a 3.5% slump the year before, according to Seoul's Bank of Korea. It was the worst drop since 1997 during the peak of a nationwide famine that saw hundreds of thousands, some estimates say millions, die of starvation. The North does not publish economic statistics of its own, leaving outside estimates as the only available figures for its financial performance. The UN Security Council in 2017 banned North Korea's main exports, coal, fisheries, and textile products, among others, to cut off its access to hard currency in response to Pyongyang's pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles.
Friday profits surged while its user base grew in a quarterly update that lifted its share price. The short messaging service said profit rose to $1.1 billion, lifted by a one-time tax benefit, up from $100 million a year earlier. The profit excluding the one-time adjustment was below forecasts, but revenue was better than expected at $841 million, as was user growth. Twitter's new measure of its user base Monetizable daily active users was 139 million compared to 122 million in the same period the previous year. Shares in Twitter rallied 4.9% in pre-market trades following the release. The results showed Twitter remains profitable and is boosting the number of users even as it moves aggressively to weed out fake accounts and curb abusive content. Eagle News will be right back. Stay with us.
All the members of the Iglesia Ni Cristo Church of Christ all over the world, we would like to greet you. Happy 105th anniversary!
From the district of Manitoba, we here in the local congregation of Esteban greets all the brethren all over the world a Happy 105th anniversary all!
From the local congregation of Fresno, Ecclesiastical District of Northeast California, we want to greet all the brethren around the world.
Happy 105th anniversary!
Sa darating pong July 27, 2019, ipagdiriwang po ng lahat ng mga kaanib sa Iglesia ni Cristo sa buong mundo ang pagsapit nito sa kanyang ika-105 anibersaryo.
Kaugnay po nito ay inaanyayahan po namin kayo na panoorin po ninyo ang special telecast na inihanda po ng INC-TV.
Hi! Ako po si Lilet. Lagi po kayong manood ng Young Once Upon a Time, Season 3 tuwing linggo, alas 8 ng gabi, dito lang sa Net25.
Landmarks, linggo, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi.
Our EBC correspondent in Canada, Isabel Fernandez, takes us to dinner with a difference. The Diner en Blanc is a worldwide event spanning 6 continents in which people gather in a public space and set up a temporary chic dining area. Guests come dressed in white to enjoy quality food. Let's take a look.
Today we're here at Van Dusen Gardens in Vancouver, Canada, where thousands of white-clad guests have gathered for a night of festivities. Let's check it out.
Dîner en Blanc is an international event held yearly at multiple locations. This dinner in the park is a dinner date with a difference. First, the ground rules. You must be dressed in white, and you have to bring your own table and chairs. You also have to provide your own food. And you can't just show up and crash the event. The location is kept secret, and you must be invited. One of the organizers, Jordan Coleman, says since its inception, these traditions have been strictly followed.
Of course, this tradition to dress in all white, it's tradition to dine at a table for 2, it's tradition to bring your own tables and chairs and share food with friends. This event is very much steeped in tradition, and that's what makes it super magical and super beautiful.
But why the secret location?
The secret location is just a bonus because it adds like mystery and intrigue and some like anticipation, which is all beautiful human emotions and experiences in and of themselves, which amplify and make the event that just that much better.
Dîner en Blanc began in Paris in 1988 when Francois Pasquier invited a group of friends to an outdoor dinner. He asked them to dress in white so they could find each other. This event is now held in 70 cities, including Vancouver. The latest dinner had about 4,000 guests. This year, the founder, Pasquier, traveled from France to Vancouver to attend.
From Vancouver, Canada, I'm Isabel Fernandez, 1 with 25.
Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards on Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Anna Cui. Thanks for joining us.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles and
we're
one with 25.